weed out the nonsense and talk about the ghouls in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, along with my partner, as always.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanna My Booty.
And we're here to talk shop and talk about abolitionist topics with a local flavor. Sometimes we talk about bigger issues, but we try to keep it local. As abolitionists, there's not a day that goes by that we don't aren't how to put this aren't where there's not a day that goes by that we aren't reminded of the negativity, and we focused a lot on triumph here, and people doing good work, and that's great, but one of our passions is Copaganda, and it's consuming and all over the place. We swim in it, from the TV shows to the movie to music to even something as American as cowboys and outlaws. It's all propaganda. It's really unfortunate. It's appealing to an authority, and kind of always builds in the excuse that the authority should be trusted. So we're going to talk about some stuff that's happening in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, Cambridge police have unalived a citizen or a community member named Sayed Faisal. I hope I'm saying that right. Apologies if I'm not. He was basically having a mental health crisis and wielding some sort of object, and he was unceremoniously murdered, to quote unquote de-escalate the situation. And this is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Maybe y'all have heard of it. It's where Harvard University is located. In Eastern Mass, it's considered the quote unquote woke capital. It's where supposedly progressive politics are born. To me, it's a lot of identity politics, but we can go into a little bit more about the dynamics of progressive Massachusetts, its propaganda, and how it's actually really more insidious because we get to lie to ourselves and tell ourselves it's a progressive state. For example, our governor, first female governor, I think, elected.
Yeah.
We had Jane Swift, who was the lieutenant governor, who filled in when the governor, I can't remember his name at this moment. I can see his face, but regardless, so this is our first female elected governor. She also identifies as a part of the LGBTQ community. And, it's great that identity is being acknowledged and they can get to seats of power in theory, but these things get weaponized. She's a cop. I mean, she's an attorney general, and they're the top cop. They're the ones that are in charge of all the prosecutions, from white collar to petty crime. They're in charge of it all. So she's a cop. We elected cops. That's what we do. That's the people that seem to rise up the ranks in Massachusetts. But how does this have to do with this individual in Cambridge being unceremoniously executed by the Cambridge Progressive Police? Basically, we are conditioned to accept this authority, and in a place like Massachusetts, it is progressive in some ways. The fact that we even have a female in such a high rank, even in attorney general, it is progressive, I guess. And it's not lost on me at this moment that I realize I haven't had Joanna chime in at all. So even here, we struggle with men talking too much. So,
No,
but I
it's
would love to hear
fine.
your thoughts before we get into the details and how how propaganda played a role in disseminating the story about the Cambridge police murdering a civilian.
Well, I agree with you that Massachusetts is progressive in many ways compared to other states in the country, potentially. And I know a lot of people and even friends of mine who feel, really proud about that. And I think it is something that we can have pride in, but also like we still need to be pushing things forward because this story is like many others, like Miguel Estrella in Pittsfield. I'm going to highlight that. Like this young man, Saeed, was 20 years old. He was having a mental health crisis. We have a surplus of money in Massachusetts. We are able to help our citizens in, again, many ways that there are states that have no access to this type of financial tax surplus or things like that. Like we are a wealthier state, quote unquote. So it does lead me to really ask questions. And I know many people are feeling the same way. um, why are people gunning down Black and Brown citizens? Why are any of you who are, I know some of you are completely outraged, but how can anyone not be completely wanting to overhaul the police system in general? Like, I would want them all unarmed. Like, you clearly can't do your job. You felt like you needed to go out and kill a young person having a mental health crisis when, people we've had on our show, like Spencer's wife, Bridget, who's a social worker, and others that I know well have de escalated situations without a gun and without murdering someone. And I think those are thoughts that I really think people have to reflect on. I feel terrible for this person's family, for the community that's been impacted, and for the people that are probably now living in more fear because now this police department, in my opinion, has shown its true colors. Um, they tend to do that pretty frequently. And I feel like people of color and people having mental health crises aren't safe in a lot of towns in Massachusetts. That's what this says to me. So, and the propaganda part of things, I guess, Spence, I'm always happy that you focused on that. I know it's like some people may say too much, but honestly, there are times where I still will get caught off guard and not realize something's propaganda because it's so baked into our society and the way that, like, even like the old west, I think you and I were talking about that recently. Like there's just so many ways where it's baked in. And I do think about, like, even we've never gone
Old West, the movie Tombstone,
so
without him,
good.
and it's based on a true story. Obviously, it's dramatized, but basically, the heroes of the story are reformed outlaws that just want to control one part. It's a gang. It runs like a gang, and how they deal with the quote unquote worst people, the other, they do unethical things. Like we literally have a movie about the OK Corral shootout, and like that's like a triumph of law enforcement.
Well,
These
yeah, because they become like sheriffs in the town.
and keep in mind, I know people don't understand, but it's only been 150 years. So that's only 3-4 generations, right? So this is the reform. The current police institution that we have now is the reformed version of that. So you don't think they haven't gotten better? And to me, um, when you said the Cambridge police showed their true colors, it's not that one individual on the Cambridge police unalived a civilian. It's how they respond even. So you can question, well, we can always have the question, is it the system, or is it a bad apple? Well, this bad apple was taught that this is a okay solution to anything. This is quote unquote de-escalation. And then to see how they manipulate the media after the fact and try to defend themselves. At first they tell the media right away before anybody can fact check them and take advantage of the profit model that our media operates in. The first journalist is going to run with it. Machete wielding man involved in officer involved shooting. So it's like passive voice going right to this person's a violent, crazy person. And once that story's out there, it's out there and it can't come back. No matter how many, we pulled a screenshot of the Mass Live. We typed in the Cambridge police into the Mass Live website, pulled up all their links that have that. So at the, there's like 10 links that we have, and most of it has to do with the shooting. There's a couple other things that aren't related to the shooting, but the first thing that mentions this, it says machete wielding man in Cambridge shot, killed by police. So it's very passive, and that's on January 4th. And the next day, the license, the headline is Cambridge man shot and killed by police. So still passive, but they dropped the machete wielding because the evidence probably doesn't bear that out. Local other footage of stuff. And to me, they just want to get that first story out there, and then the other journalists will catch up and get more facts. But that first story is out there, and that's a more salacious headline, and put people Google search it. Or when the next budget hearing comes up in Cambridge, this is going to be brought up. Joanna and I have been, we've talked to Chief Casper in Northampton, and we've talked about capital investments and like, why do you need this? Well, we still haven't replaced this car about this one time this person hit an officer, and like they invoked this officer getting hurt or killed on the job and why they need to spend $1 million. And it's like, well, I understand that this awful thing happened, but like, what does this have to do with you needing 10 new cruisers? So it's like they will always try to use these tragedies, so they need to get those headlines out there. It's very, and again, this is about profit, so it's not even really this big conspiracy, right, Joanna? It's protecting the budget and utilizing any tool. They have literal PR departments, a police force with the resources of the Cambridge Police, which has a good tax base, and they are protecting wealthy elites. They are protecting the Harvard professors. They are protecting those business people, those doctors. They are. So that's the petite bourgeoisie or whatever you want to call it. But the profit model, it applies there. And then, the rest of us, we all say like Cambridge is like progressive soft zone, like safe space, but it's really not if you're not white.
I completely agree, and I think
Or
the other
rich.
right, agreed, and I think the
Years
other
ago, during the Obama presidency, Cornel West, there was
yes,
an issue. The police profiled him in his own goddamn home, and he is a rich professor. Well, relatively rich.
he does well.
He does okay. Upper middle class, lower upper class. Regardless, they still profile like this is not a progressive place,
No,
and they
Doc
did
and
show who
Dr.
they
West
are and how they
Dr. West left Harvard for that
and how the
reason.
quotes that they've allowed to go out into the media, like what the police advisory board and the mayor and the chief of police or the commissioner or whatever they call the highest rank there is. It's all organized a little differently, so forgive me if I'm fuzzy on everybody's ranking, but they all come up with excuses and they talk about this like I don't know what the word is, nimbus or like nebulous mental health crisis that nobody wants to like. Yeah, you're right. But
Yeah.
so how was a bullet the solution? It's like and then we're sitting here debating this is how Copaganda works, because then we get stuck in the weeds about was he wielding a machete? And it's like, well, like this person wasn't in the right state of mind, and if we had resources to help people already established, like these scenarios wouldn't get this out of hand.
And nothing justifies the state killing someone.
Unfortunately, I understand that people like want to humanize it and say like, well, you're a cop and there's a guy you think is a weapon. Listen, yes, if you take any random person that doesn't have supposedly any training and you put them in that situation and expect them to be perfect, yeah, that's really unreasonable. But these men are men and women and people, whatever, they're supposedly trained. And their training tells them to do this. It makes no sense. So it's either they're not up to train, and we all know that's a lie because police departments like the Chicago PD have been under reform since the 1960s. So it's what they're training them is the problem. What they're training them to do, the actual solution to the problem, is going to keep creating this outrage. And it's really,
like,
but Copaganda plays a role. It normalizes it. Like, I want you all to understand like how emotionally draining it is to live in the world of Copaganda. My personal like internet experience since starting the Weed Out, it's not really like shooting the shit with my friends. Hasn't been like that for a long time, because you know I don't need validation on the internet like that.
stop it. I like to flash them.
Again, like, I just said I don't care if anybody else does. That's
Don't
fine.
yuck. Don't yuck. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
but regardless, like it's very draining being in a sea of propaganda. There's literally like
Oh, yeah.
I have a couple hours to scroll on Twitter or any news feed, just a couple hours any given day. I'll see 25 egregious stories, not follow-ups to stories, like news stories. And then the follow-ups, if there are anybody chasing leads, if there is resources thrown into it by media, or there are just angry self funded journalists and activists, unearthing things. Like, it's endless. It's endless. And now I can't watch TV. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy things. Like, I enjoyed Top Gun, but I had to like go into it literally to Bridget, and I said like, yeah, we're gonna go watch like a military industrialist like advertisement. I know that's not Copaganda, but it's military industrial complex propaganda. So it's the same. It operates on the same principle. It's always normalize it. It is what it is, and this isn't, again, it's not a giant conspiracy in my opinion. It's just profit motive and guns and protecting property and hoarding resources and needing people to protect the resources and protect the status quo. It's good business.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense. I was just gonna say, like, it makes sense if you want to protect your, bottom line, which is your salary, your pensions, your good overtime, to have a good PR arm when you're the type
It's like the cops, just
yeah, but that you'd want to protect that because like first of all, like that's not they have it pretty good in terms of stuff like that. They try to, they garner your they play off of our fear and use propaganda to keep us afraid, even though they're not really unsafe compared to like many other jobs, including like, you know, truck driving, welding sometimes. Like there's like a list of like jobs that came out during the pandemic where like
there's
police
20. They're not even in the top 15. I think they're in the top 20, but they're not the top 15.
so
No.
I'm saying like not most police
Some of these
officers.
jobs are like, there's a lot of people doing these jobs, so it's not total amount, it's a rate.
And so yeah, so most
Rate of
people.
death is higher in other jobs, so that accounts for the fact that
Right.
it's not 100,000 cops and 100,000 truck drivers. Just so everybody knows, like this number is based on the rate, and it's cops aren't even in the top 15.
It's because crime is like they create a narrative of crime to keep us afraid, to keep that budget intact. And honestly, I think about the propaganda I guess I want people to really be aware of even more so too would be the ones where it's like on Facebook and you're watching like a group of cops and there's a person in Pittsfield we've never called out or featured, but I'm going to talk about him right now because I honestly do believe that Officer Darren Derby potentially has really good intentions and cares about the community of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. But his page and him going on the Today Show and he takes photos of people who are unhoused and who are in compromised positions. And you know what? He still does go out into the community and try to meet with community members and stuff. But despite all of that, he is really a PR arm of the Pittsfield Police Department. And there are multiple ways you'll see it. Like even here in my town of Montague, they recently like the police donated a bunch of money to like a local like school thing, like school sports event. And like, they'll raise money during certain and they have a comfort dog sometimes and things like that. And I just feel like there are enough stories where the police are also involved in like many times hurting children that I feel like people really need to be careful just like with any other content. Like things are created now to be like ads for us, like we know that to be true on so many platforms, and so the police are doing that too because it's lucrative for the bottom line, which is keeping your budget intact, which is keeping us scared, which is keeping we need them to be
It's
safe.
also, as much as it is to indoctrinate and to normalize and to gaslight the community into accepting authority like this in this system that is ultimately punitive and not rehabilitative and actually a big money maker. Um, the other thing it does is it recruits fascists. And
Well,
I'm
and
sorry, little Timmy that wants to have law and order, and dad and Uncle Jimmy. And I know people like this, and I know this isn't it's a very small percentage of our population, but there's this real toxic patriarchal Puritan element. And there's it also is like, hey, this is a recruitment tool. This club is for you.
well, yeah, like it makes sense too though, like
So
you'd
it's
want to
like, it's
bring.
very efficient
Yeah, and
just
I
to
think
keep some people in line and to recruit others.
Well, and the good PR works on people like me or others who are hoping that they're helping the community. So like there's multiple realms where like, okay, it's not just like I'm unsafe. It's like they're really actually out there helping, maybe. And then okay, but like I'm just using these examples of good ones, especially.
That officer and that public relations officer, or social media cop in Pittsfield that you mentioned, before I met you, I had heard of him, and
Oh yeah, he's really popular. Like
being really icked out. Again, like I have a background in communication, and I remember when social media first came out, one of the first questions, I was in college when the stuff was popping off, so we were asking questions like this, like what is this gonna like, these little mini Goebbels are going to be running around. And you know what? When this, I think his response, that Pittsfield police, they really started pumping that out post Trayvon Martin, right? Or
it's been
post not
like
Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile or something like that. It was like, it was
I
not, it was
I
pre George Floyd. It was pre George Floyd, but it was it was right when they started really ramping up community policing. One of the,
I'd honestly have to look. I think Officer Darren Derby has literally been doing that. Like, and I'm saying this way, and in case anyone wants to look up his page on Facebook, I would like just put if he hears this podcast, I just need to put the call out to him because again, in the videos and in his statements, he always seems like someone who genuinely cares about the community of Pittsfield and wants to help people. And I would ask him to please just leave policing and do that in another way because he is supposedly he's trying to help people and keep them safe, and I just feel like if that's the case to any police officer, again, I've said this in multiple episodes, like you can find work elsewhere, you do not need to carry a gun and put the chance of you potentially shooting someone because clearly when all of y'all get afraid, like there's a chance. And I'm not saying that I actually feel like there are studies and psychological studies specifically on how like putting you in a position of power, giving you a gun and like basically immunity to kill would make you actually kill someone, especially if you felt afraid. And I think our society needs to think about that too, like the positions we put people in, the power dynamics we could allow for us, like our tax dollars pay for us to be told by someone else with a gun what we can and cannot do. And those are the things when they're protecting their budget line, like those are our monies that we as the people should be able to decide on together. So that's why I think if Spencer and I seem really passionate, like it's because I think we all should be about something that's so important and involves our own hard work and is involved in every aspect of our life, really.
yeah. And this propaganda stuff, I'm going to keep bringing it, I'm always going to bring it back to that, because I really do feel like this is what is how we've been normalized and stuck in this cycle. And this could be applied to weapons manufacturers and school shootings. Like it's just rinse repeat, same shit over and over again. It works on a good enough percentage of the population that are just numb to it. 30 to 40% of the people, I'm making that number up, I don't know, it's just what my gut says, enough that you can't get consensus by the rest of us who have a strong opinion. um and we're stuck in this loop, and this is exactly what propaganda does. And it's not just as simple as cops doing racist things, as posting mugshots of black people
Right.
pre-due process, just because they're poor and they're not Robert Kraft who can pay to bury things. um Google Robert Kraft sex scandal or scam.
Ew.
It's like he was able to
No.
get that shit like pretty much put away. It's billionaires versus like some
Ugh.
random dude having a mental break and smashing a bunch of windows at MGM, or a sex worker. And it's like you're punching down on these like little people that can't defend themselves, can't, like now they're going to be, ostracized in their community. Like it's a death sentence in a lot of ways. Like, and it's not to say that you shouldn't be held accountable for doing something awful, but like, I don't know. It's just crazy how these media operations use each other, the between the PR of the police and the actual journalism or the media companies. And then the average everyday person also reinforces it, because it does a good job of manipulating emotions and keeping you afraid. So even if you're a smart person.
Spence, absolutely. Like if I told most people in Pittsfield how like that Darren Derby is this, how this is what's they would be outraged by me because of what he does in the community, how nice he is. They like it would not be considered propaganda. Like it's one over thousands of people, I'm sure, in that community.
And it's not to say that people can't do good. It's just it's denying the fact the tools that the cops have. They really only have two tools: fines and cage. That's it. That's the only two tools. Well, cage implying violence too. I mean, up to and including killing you or maiming you severely.
Well, right. If we're supposed to
They can
trust
also
you,
maim, and they can maim your. They easily have a megaphone to maim an individual's character. So even if they don't beat you up, or even well, actually take that back. They do it to black. They do it to poor people all the time. Black people specifically, like George Floyd. They put out there that he was on drugs when there was no
yes.
autopsy done yet. They just said like we think he was on drugs, but the way they say it is, oh, he's on drugs. He just basically deserved to die. He was on drugs. He was going to die anyways. And that's the shit they do, and they do it. And it's to me, it's like they're just hiring the same guys to be cops, like the same guys, the sons of these guys, over and over, generation over and over, back all the way back to slave catchers and outlaws and cowboys, right? Like it's like they're hiring the same guy over and over again, and they're doing the same tricks. Like this is the same tricks they did in the 80s with paper clippings in Philadelphia, New York, Boston about all this. And that rose to vigilante action. And that's not good. We don't want that either. Like surprisingly, as crime is going down and the fear mongering is going up, I'm shocked there aren't more vigilante groups like there were in the 80s. And again, guys, like this is all
Well, I will say there are militias, like in my
malicious,
opinion.
but
Well,
no,
there are
the
right wing
neighborhood
militias
watch
that are
was
no, they don't
in
have that.
the 80s and 90s. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just and it was like, and then there was the whole thing in the 80s in New York City with the Guardian Angels. What was that?
The Hells Angels, maybe?
No,
I don't
Hell
know that.
Motorcycle Club. But there
Oh,
was
I don't know then.
I think they were called the Guardian Angels or some shit. It was a vigilante group, and it's just like that's what this newspaper clippings lead to. Cops are ineffective. We need more money. Then people like the cops can't do anything, so we're gonna do something about
Well,
it.
and
And it
they
turns
ask
into
for help
mob.
sometimes. Like they do ask for help sometimes. So like if you're asking for help, like honestly, I could see a confused citizen just going out there and you know what
Right.
I mean?
And it just leads to chaos, and and at the end of the day, it's like no, the way they spin it, it's not that they're inept, it's that they don't have the resources.
But it's like look at their budgets, everyone. They
Just
do.
bump them up. And this is how it's been endless. It's been endless. They've been chasing these boogeymen, and there are bad things happening, but they're not going after those bad things because those usually involve powerful people, and it's pretty logical if you think about it. And I don't know. I don't want to sound too much like a conspiracy theorist, but it's not just cops. I think we could beat this topic to the ground. It's not just cops. DAs and AGs do it too. District attorneys and AGs do it. Like right now, there's a district attorney, and the new district attorney is trying to swing his hoo-ha around and be like, I'm going after meth. And like,
Oh yeah, in Pittsfield.
or like, oh, we're trying this person for 20K worth of meth. It's like, all right, what does that even mean? Like 20K if you're selling it by the gram, is it, you know,
I know street value. Like what
trading
I mean.
out an unregulated substance, like with no scale that's agreed upon by any regulatory body? Like it's so arbitrary and sensationalized. And, you know, you see the mass state troopers do this shit all the time. And I know I was trying to get to DAs and AGs, but like when they like pull somebody over the mass pike with they're from Connecticut and they have unlicensed firearm in Massachusetts and like a couple $1,000 in cash and baggies of whatever, up to and including the worst shit. And it's just like that's that dude's life savings right there. Like that's not like a big operator. That's that dude's life savings and his protection. And it's like that's the way I see it. So I'm like, that's not a flex. It's like, how many officers did you spend? What are the resources to get all of this? This isn't like nothing. And this person is like fucked now. And I'm not saying, yeah, I don't want you like dealing unregulated drugs because it's fucking dangerous. Like, that's the way I see it. I'm I don't have a problem with people doing drugs. I have a problem with people selling potentially dangerous shit, and we have no checks and balance on it. And yeah, but that's different conversation for a different day. But these DAs and they flex these like it's like straight out Super Troopers when they like the governor's like spread it on and like holding the shotgun.
Yeah,
You
like they
know,
were super happy to get like all that stuff. And
Super Troopers. Go watch Super Troopers. That's like a master class in like making fun of like our perception of like if you actually think about like the things cops and DAs and the punitive justice system uses to sell itself, it's actually like comical. They think that's like they walk away and like, yeah, so like our solution is to throw somebody in a cage and they'll maybe get sexually assaulted and that's what they deserve. And it's
by
like
us,
that's
by
not a
us.
flex. Or like by anybody, just like we're gonna throw them into this wild zone. That'll teach them. It's like that's that's what you think is a good system to like rehabilitate people.
Well, and that's my question to like anyone who like says that they care about people. Like, I'm sorry, the prison system in
That's
America.
I bring up the sexual assault thing. Not sorry to like be so crass, but like, come on, people. That's like a known. That's like one of the most common things we like all talk about, accept, joke about, threaten.
Right, but that's kind of sick to joke about.
It's
Like that's
gross.
yeah,
It's
like
gross.
yeah. It's not okay that we've normalized putting people in a situation that's basically torture. I know that some like federal prison or like county prisons might not be as upset as hard as like a maximum security or other ones, but I am sorry. Like if you think that
Social
you're
threat of it. Even if
but
none of it's real, but like even if that's just the threat.
it's just if you think you're a good moral person and we're evolving as human beings into like, you know, good, better people and you're having kids and you're instilling like good values and morals in them, not if you, I'm sorry, if you believe that that is how we should deal with a whole section of our society, much larger than most
And
countries, whatever.
who decides who needs to be adjudicated and penalized?
Yeah, like it reflect on that. Like it is just wrong that our country spends the kind of money it does on literally tormenting people, ruining their lives, and putting them into like slavery work. And depending on the state, and most states let prison work be a thing. So we've talked about this in other episodes. You can go back, but like it's how I mean we are supposed to be a better people, learning all of the time, growing. How can this be our system? How can you not be tired of your money paying for something like this? How it makes me sick sometimes to think about. Like almost I would say I won't say daily because I do enjoy my life as Spencer said too, but as someone who's always been not always, but since I was young in my 20s, focused on like how do prisons exist and we're all okay with it. I still sit here 20 years later and I'm just disgusted.
And
Like,
anytime somebody hears us and questions us or me or people like us and whoever's listening to this, and if somebody says, well, what are you going to do about the rapist? Listen, there's going to be consequences, people. There's got to be consequences. And that has to be victim centered.
and we've talked about this in other episodes, so please go listen to those episodes. We've shared alternatives to like that you could utilize. This is more just about like the reason you even probably feel okay with prison, and that's what we're trying to get at, is that you have propaganda coming down the whatever pike you're on every hour of every day, be it Fox News, be it the regular news, be it the newspaper, be it Mass Live, be it WLP. I think you're in agreement with me, Spence. Like it's just I think it normalizes all of these things that are basically inhumane.
And
And
think
it's
about how we romanticize our like gangsters and going to jail too. And
well,
it's a
I
rite of
know.
passage. And it's like it's so embedded in our culture, guys. That's all I'm saying. It's very embedded in our culture. Um taking on the man is very, very much in our culture. And it's kind of like guns. Guns are very American. And explains why like that's what all our foreign relations are about. It's about guns. Like everything we do is about guns, whether we
Or
like
and oil.
and oil. But yeah, guns though, because how do you get the oil? Guns. It all goes back to guns. But yeah, I mean, just keep in mind, like, and when cops flex, how much something they've seized, some contraband. I'll just keep it loose, like contraband. Like, what happens to that stuff, guys? Like,
Yeah.
it's the leverage and
Really?
trap other people at best. That's assuming they're like doing their job with it as opposed to doing something crooked with it. Um, they pick and choose when they're going to share this stuff with us. It's very obvious. Like if I was like, I just try to like remember what I was like to be a teenager. Like that's how I think the easiest way to understand the mindset of the police institution is they think like impulsive teenage American boys.
Well, and it's a business though, so they are thinking about their bottom line too, you know?
Sure, but they're still impulsive. So everything
Yeah.
is very short-sighted.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason they call them pigs is because they'll just keep digging and digging and digging and going and going, and that's what pigs do when you let them on pasture. They'll root up anything. You cannot, if there's food on the other side of a brush wall, they will destroy that brush wall. They're so short-sighted and they're determined and they'll do anything. And it's the system has been baked in. They like invented crisis control in PR, like LAPD, NYPD, and you think about it like Holyoke PD, in my opinion, go about Goebbels over there. He's running like the Rudy Giuliani playbook because that's like the old school playbook.
Yeah, he really seems like, remember
They would love to do perp walks if we had they say like some prominent person in the flats gets arrested. He wants to do. He would love to do a perp walk if he could. Call WWLP down. Like
God.
it's so, and like again, this is shit like DAs do. It's a flex. It's a show of force. Um, and simultaneously, like the left and the right in this country, they're both similar on this. Like when you go online and you see a bunch of liberals or leftists yelling at Merrick Garland, the attorney general, to like be doing press briefings and be bombastic. It's like actually the one thing I don't mind about this fucking guy is he seems to be doing his job and it's showing in the court documents.
Mm.
It's boring and not sexy, but like that's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, you know how I feel then.
But I have no faith. I have no faith that they're gonna hold. I also don't think like Donald Trump should go to jail. Like
right.
I
That's
think
my
he did. Personally, I think the punishment should fit the crime. And my idea is to make him live on Social Security insurance, live in affordable assisted living, and have to go and get his mac and cheese and his Diet Coke and his little cart from the grocery store. Like I think he should have to be like every other 79-year-old white guy in fucking Florida that has no family that wants to deal with him.
I know it's still punitive to me though,
Like
and then
I mean, but that's not a
but
bad
that
look.
I know it's not, but it does bring
It is
me
for
to
him.
it brings me to like another point, which is like we treat our elderly so terribly. So no, I'm not upset with your
I'm just being like
analogy, but that just leads me down a path.
change the system.
I know that
I'm just
just
saying, like, I'm assuming we're not abolishing the criminal justice system. It's like just put an ankle bracelet on him and make him have to cook his own ramen noodles. Because I'm not saying it's because he might not be able to afford more ramen noodles. I don't think he could do more than boil water. I don't think he's had to take care of himself.
No, you're correct. I mean, that would be enough punishment for him. It's just when I think about like people in America living on Social Security, I feel like he would finally like understand how hard he's made people's lives because it's such oftentimes a small amount of money.
Blame him. I mean, this is the system. He's just
Well, I'm just saying he should like he was president at one time and should understand like all of these rich people who think they should gut Social Security and get rid of those things. I mean, you're basically saying that you hope a bunch of people to like live in poverty and die.
no
When you
way.
say that, yeah.
Like a meritless existence.
I mean, that's horrible to like wish on anyone. And again, I don't understand. I don't know.
And also, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't appreciate to stay on the Copaganda topic. Like, I get really like annoyed when I see people posting personally, I think it's reprehensible to be like posting like Trump is guilty. It's like we don't know that, like, it actually has to be tried in court. Like, if we're gonna live and die by this system that we supposedly give a shit about, like, if I'm reading the way it's kind of like why I can't fall in line with Christians most of the time. It's like, if you want to be about being a Christian, you got to stop doing what you're doing. There's a lot of people in this country that say they're American patriots, but they want blood. They want to infringe on other people's rights and due process rights. For example, with Donald Trump, like, they want to post pictures of him in an orange jumpsuit. It's like, that's fucked up. Just, what are you doing? Like, to me, it's more damning. What we should be focusing on is like, look, there's two systems of justice. This dude gets to skate, not be posting propaganda of him in a fucking orange jumpsuit. Like, we should talk about the issue, because it's not really about him.
Yeah, those people are highly confused.
And
And
I'm saying, so this problem exists left, right, on the quote unquote political spectrum in America, and the Overton window from left to right, like the acceptable political spectrums of Democrat, Republican. It's like both sides, quote unquote, are like brutally guilty of this shit, and it drives me nuts. And like, we live in Massachusetts, again, quote unquote progressive state. For example, Northampton, Chief Casper, for all our disagreements with her, she doesn't post mugshots. And she said, from her point of view, she doesn't even think about due process, and I do. That's what I think about. She's thinking about, like, humanely, like, this person's, it's a really bad day for this fucking person. Like, she's admitting the humanity still, so that's good. Like,
I do love that about that department. Like, it's such a good example for others.
with their, we have some problems with them.
Oh, we have a lot of problems because they are what they are, but like the fact that they're not just pumping out.
The fact that they have a chief that understands, like, it's actually just like really fucked up to like do that to somebody, some regular, from a DUI to whatever. It's just like, the justice system is good enough, is powerful enough on its own.
I will say though, like that type of community, Northampton, which is like more progressive within the state of Massachusetts, a more progressive town. I will say that I think Chief Casper may be a little different because in that town there have been meetings and we've been at them, but the public will show up. So if that police station was using their PR arm in a way that was super negative, I think the community would show up and let them know how they felt. I've been at meetings in Northampton. I'm not saying that this means in other communities in any way that you aren't showing up and that you're not getting things done, but it's a small, very wealthy community. And when, you're
Specifically a specific type of background too, educational background, not a specific, I should say, but a high density of liberal arts, social justice, humanitarian based degrees.
so to live up to that, they really like the leadership typically has to somewhat, and it's very like compromised with the public. And I think, someone like Chief Casper is oftentimes that type of compromise. So it seems a little bit better too, but it's also like,
I also don't want to focus just on education. I shouldn't have done that, because there's a vibrant non-hetero culture there, non-heterosexual. There's obviously, it's predominantly heterosexual.
oh yeah, this is the one of the most diverse like air.
The trans community, the drag, anything you can think of, compared to most of the country, and it's densely populated, and also like everybody's pretty chill, like, for the most part. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but it's definitely chiller here in that regard, and thank God. But you go further south into Holyoke or parts of Springfield, it's
Completely different.
I don't want to rule it. I'm not going to say, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but like, Northampton is special in that way. So, it's also like not easy to take their model and put it in other communities. It's just very unique in its own right. Western Mass in general, I guess. But it is unfortunate because then down the road, like, you have Gobot Goebbels in Holyoke, just putting the blackest mugshots you can out there and just like leaning all in on the drug addicts are ruining our neighborhoods, and look at these stray gunshots, you should be afraid, like to scare the white people that fund the police. Like, let's be real. I mean, this city relies a lot on property tax to pay the bills because there's not much else happening here. So it's like this catch 22 where it's like the landowners, the quote unquote taxpayers, which we all know is bullshit. JR has talked about this. Michael Hitchcock has talked about this. We've had many guests talk about this. Like, there's other taxes we all pay. We pay the landlords who are then paying a tax. So just because it's not directly coming out of your land or being charged to your land, you're still helping pay that tax. You can't go to a store without paying a fucking tax. And most towns, especially cities, have their own tax. At least have a state tax.
Mhm.
And that all comes back. So, and gets spent on infrastructure and yada yada yada, policing. But yeah, the way they can market it is like, well, your property taxes are, high compared to a place like, I don't know, what's a place that's good, Worcester or whatever.
Or they're high compared. I don't know if they are compared to Worcester, but like your taxes are higher in Holyoke compared to my town. And when I was going around with realtors, they would tell me because and like insurance is higher because of the crime rates and like meeting and stuff like that.
Well,
That
that's a bunch of horseshit.
that's the narrative.
It's like, well, their schools stink. It's like, well, yeah, because you tied school funding to property value. So,
There's so many reasons. You're giving the police a ridiculous amount of overtime. Like there's so many reasons.
oh yeah, and the Holyoke budget's pretty bad. Anyway, so all this propaganda pretty much ends up fucking us all in the end, and then ends us having us quibble about like, well, cops solve crimes. And it's like, well, disproportionately, the crimes you hear about aren't really the majority of their work. I mean, murders in a place like Holyoke, yeah, unfortunately, when there's poverty, there's going to be more death. And yeah, they do have to have detectives. Like, that shit costs money.
Mhm.
But like sometimes, like, the state has to come in and take over. I'm not like an expert on this. Like, this would be a great area to talk to like lawyers about. But my rough understanding is like, yeah, like, I understand this stuff costs money, but like they're still not spending. Most of their budget is spent elsewhere, and most of it is just traffic enforcement, which can then lead to pretextual stops, which then lead to bench warrants and yada yada. All the ways this can trickle down and cost regular people a lot of money, and it keeps their system going, and it makes them look good, and then that's how you get promoted and how you keep job security, and it's all profit motive. I always bring up propaganda and profit motive because they're tied. It makes it simple to understand the motivation, and that's it at the end of the day. And they're just trying to spin what they do, which is, at the end of the day, their only tools are fines and cages, and they can fine you to death too. you know yeah, lots of people get in trouble with the government, and speed up the process. So, because once you get behind, and get in the justice system, it's hard to get out of that machine. Joanna, please.
I mean, that's part of the cruelty, in my opinion. Like, if you are someone who isn't an abolitionist listening, like, why is that okay to you? Like, why, like, you could end up in that position so easily as like any person. Like, you get one stop of like, I don't know, maybe you had a few drinks one night and you decided to drive home and like something happens to you. Like, then you get behind on your, payments that you're supposed to be paying for like all of your things to make. Usually you have to do some like classes and go and get tested to make sure you aren't drinking, depending on what you're like doing. So you fall behind on that. And like, honestly, you're not able to drive to your job maybe, and you don't have the means to have someone drive you. Like, I feel like everyone thinks the police are here to keep us safe, but like at any moment they could pull any one of us over, basically lie and say we did something wrong, plant drugs on us like they did in Springfield where the DOJ took over, and then your life is ruined. So I just feel like, how is this system? And I know it's not every cop, so I don't need people to explain that to me, but it's like, how could you be okay with like even anyone? And like, if there's one person and even like Western Mass that could do that to me, I'm not interested. Like, no, thank you.
Let's presume, like we all know, I know people that have done not great things.
Yeah, my nephew spent 7 years in prison for drug crimes, nonviolent drug crimes. I'm sorry. I
And I know people who have done violent things related to drugs, but still,
oh,
that is
he's
a violent
I'm sh-
thing. And it's like, yeah, dude, that's not like, it's not acceptable. Like, it's not okay. And I please, like this, people always push back on abolition. Like, we're not saying no consequence, okay? But even if you're my thing is like, if the world can't come to a consensus, and the one consensus they can come to is like people that do something really violent, they need to be away from everybody. It's like, can we at least not torture them while they're
right, right.
that's like my baseline there. It's like, well, I don't need it to be a country club, but they already can't go wherever. So why do they have to be miserable on uncomfortable beds in cold situations with no control over the fucking lights? Like, you don't even get to decide if you're going to go outside for an hour today, or 45 minutes or 3 hours. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then you have to work for pennies on the dollar. It's not okay, in my
No,
opinion.
it's like completely like I feel more and more, and I've always felt this, but I feel more and more that when if you're just an average person that doesn't know much about the prison system and you hear this, how can you be okay? Like I literally think about people in multiple prisons all across the country that are just like you just said, Spencer, like no AC, no heat, depending, and it will be like harsh extremes. The food terrible, the
No
treatment
medical.
awful. It's basically torment. Like how does that rehabilitate or make us safer? These people are going to get they're going to get out of prison potentially and be so angry and messed up.
I'm traumatized.
And how does that make anything better?
And then they're gonna go back. That's what always happens.
Or
Recidivism is a big issue, but it's about money, keeping those beds filled, and it's gross. It's gross because the CEOs have a vested interest in keeping the beds filled too.
I know, but that part's sick. Like as a society, we can prevent and have better you can if we can't imagine better ways, I don't know what to say. Like we are supposed to be, you know, thinkers with autonomy and wanting to help each other, and there are so many people out there that want to make this country great, quote unquote, and all of that crap. Like, I'm sorry, like how it's like a ridiculous amount, Spence, and I always forget like how many people we incarcerate like worldwide, and like how it's so shocking that like an enormous amount of our population compared to other countries. And I will share the link. Like, it's just so blatant too that we're just so used to it that we're desensitized to even being brutally cruel to one another, and that part's really scary.
Or indifferent, which is just.
Yeah.
And the important thing to remember is that share this with anybody that does any job, because everybody in this world who does any job other than caging people, so like literally a job, they're going to have some input that may offer insight on what to do. Like, there's sociologists and psychologists and doctors and people that organize a bunch of construction workers to like get a job done. Like, they're going to have input on how to solve a complex problem. So like, this is about all of us reframing, ignoring the propaganda, talking about how this is propaganda. And if you're wondering like, how are we going to enjoy anything, it's fine, just talk about how propaganda was pretty obvious on that one. Like, you can still enjoy, like, I can still laugh at, like, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, even though it's propaganda.
And if you don't want to watch it because you can't ignore that, then don't. There's certain shows I just can't fucking watch because I'm like, okay.
I cannot watch Law and Order. And I also true crime shit. I think it's really
Yeah.
insane. And true crime is propaganda, everybody. Sorry for anybody listening. It really is. There's actually a lot of people who have written, abolitionists who've written about true crime being propaganda. And it's really there's a lot of racist shit and white supremacist shit in true crime. because it centers white women mostly. Yeah, so like that's Copaganda. Again, Top Gun, movies like Con Air, that's Copaganda. Like
That's the only movie with Nicolas Cage that I really like too, and that makes me
Rock
sad.
is Copaganda. It's literally
Oh
like
yeah, I remember. That's also him.
glorifying a place that had like Al Capone. Think about like, Scarface. I mean, that's Copaganda, even though it's about a bad guy.
I
He,
know.
it's about this like those things only exist because of prohibition. Like Scarface only was able to do that business because there was a prohibition on drugs, right? Like,
Right.
it's illegal to sell these substances, whatever the substance was, heroin, crack, cocaine, it doesn't matter. Like it's an illicit substance. But it's like we also you're creating a new like this aura around being a criminal, which is good for the business of being cops because see what I'm saying? And if you've ever seen The Departed, have you ever seen that movie?
Oh my gosh, I have.
Okay. So the best line in the
I
movie,
almost, I almost just used the line with a Boston accent.
I was a kid, you could be cops or criminals. And I'm here to ask you, what's the difference? Because I mean, I'm butchering the quote, but at the end of the day, you're staring at the end of a loaded gun. So the cops need the criminals need the cops. Cops perpetuate all this and control the narrative, keep us complacent, keep us scared, keeps giving them legitimate money to do their illegitimate business. And the judges are involved because they get kickbacks. There's all this organizing around how prison bed gets filled. Like these prison sentences aren't arbitrary.
Well, and like in some ways they are, but like in like a fucked up way.
Fucked up
Like in
way.
a fucked up way to like harm people that like are poor or of
Also
color. Like
how many months is this bed gonna like there is a calculation with like space.
definitely a color and like class thing too. Like you will see like a white woman potentially. I think there's like a voting thing that I can share where like a white woman voted like 32 times like fraudulently and has like a fine. But then there was like a black woman in a different state that had voted like she like didn't she voted like I don't think she meant to do what she did, but she
Oh,
voted
she was
like
told she could. I remember this. She was told she could, but like she didn't do some paperwork right in the right order or some.
she's
Really
like in
dumb
but
shit.
she's facing prison time though. So I'm
But
just
she's already been in jail once for something.
but it's just so crazy though.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
mean,
just
that's how the system gets you too. It can grind you right back, take you right back in once you got out.
and I think I just want to say like I guess for me the last point I just want to make and I've said it like at like throughout this conversation. For me it's not so much the like things that stand out as obvious propaganda. It's the stuff where police are like looking like they're soft and they're part of your community and they want you to like bring your kids to meet them and like they're doing really nice stuff in the community. Like I think
Like, come and look at the cop cars, cop cars in a parking lot. Like, and there's funnel cake. It's like come let your kid take pictures in the front seat or in the back seat. It's like let's not glorify a place where they like throw human beings like in their like rag dolls and like make kids okay with this. This is weird. I
and
want to
I
talk.
feel like well I feel like
I raised my eyebrow at people, but well before Drag Queen Story Hour, I raised it at people who are like, taking their kid to like sit on a cop's lap.
absolutely. I feel like many of our parents might have done that too because it was like, that was something I feel like that was part of like the late 80s, early 90s, like police trying to be like still on the beat and in the community, which has made a resurgence. But like, I think like it's harmful because it normalizes police. It normalizes like you think you're safe with them, but you're not actually. Like they don't have to protect you. And in 36 states, as a woman, they could have sex with me and it wouldn't be considered sexual assault, including I think this state. I'll make sure to check that again. But like there's just so many things where it's like, why would you want your kid to like my parents, even though they were never abolitionists, my mother was always like drive directly to the police station. Don't even stop for the cops. And I think she was afraid that I would be hurt or something.
Right. Go where there's cameras.
And there's more people, not just you. Like you're not alone.
Man, yeah. I mean, I don't.
But I could get like that would be like a high-speed chase nowadays. Like this is when I'm younger. Like I feel like the cops have come after certain things where they feel like their bottom line is being attacked now, and it's so hard to get new recruits. They are in a different
vilified.
yeah.
So that the vilified, that's a key word. But we're gonna hold that word for the final segment. But my final thought before the final segment, everybody's fan favorite, ghoulery and tomfoolery. That's gonna be the final segment. It's gonna vilification is the theme. But my final thought is I'm a goddamn American. My one thing I thought I was like beaten into me as an American by leftists, rightists, libertarians, all the peoples. We're Americans. We don't let the government tell us what to do. So why do you whole cloth swallow what police say? Makes no fucking sense to me. The most American thing is to not trust the police. Fuck the police should actually be our goddamn anthem.
Hell yeah, that's like what in the hell?
Like even in like, I know I described like a lot of these things as Copaganda, but like we kind of also really do reward people and say fuck the police. Like Donald Trump has been saying fuck the United States government, aka the world police, for like 30 years by working with our adversaries. I'm not really big into global politics, but like the big guys say fuck the police all the time. Like Wall Street says fuck the SEC all the time. The SEC is
those are not the people the police exist to keep in line.
And they get to say fuck the police, and we're kind of like, yeah, they're doing it all. Like Elon Musk thumbs his nose at the fucking labor board, which is the police for the fucking corporations. Like we in pop culture there was an era of rewarding people that say they were like vigilantes. I'm putting it nicely because like I don't care you sold drugs, but like we did be like, look, they said they don't need the government, like they don't want to pay their taxes, like we reward this, so why do we swallow whole cloth what cops say and like supposed to respect their authority? Thought we're Americans. That's all I'm saying. Thought we're Americans. Thought don't tread on me. How can you like wear a blue lives matter patch and a don't tread on me on the same fucking bumper? Like how can that both be on the same car? You see it happens. It's like the don't tread on me snake and the back the blue shit on the same car, and you're like,
yeah, like
not getting it. Like you're swallowing the boot that you don't want to tread on you. It makes no fucking sense. And I thought we were Americans, so why do you back the blue? That brings us to our final segment. Joanna, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Yeah, ghoulery and tomfoolery. We're trying to really lean into our white American vernacular English wave. Somebody really much funnier than me said that on TikTok, and I think ghoulery and tomfoolery is very wave, and us being the resident white American anti-government, Boomhauer, King of the Hill. What's that guy's name? Dale, the libertarian. We kind of got a little Dale in us, like the government's listening to this.
I mean,
but so the ghoulery and tomfoolery I brought up earlier, being vilified, and I also brought up the Blue Lives Matter line, the blue line matter. So in right now, Fox News, we're actually going to quote Fox News. Right, this is a first, I think, first for the Weed Out, where we quote Fox News, right? And of course, like their framing of it, we don't agree with, but we still think it's funny nonetheless. Basically, LAPD, the chief of the LAPD, has moved to ban the thin blue line flag from being worn on uniform while the officers in duty are having it on the vehicles or whatever, due to many complaints from constituents because they see the the blue line has come to represent things that happened like on January 6th, like cops being beaten by Blue Lives Matter flags, for example. And are associated with the Proud Boys now, and they are associated with the Oath Keepers and far right white supremacists. I mean, we all know that, the cops looking for white supremacists is looking for themselves off duty. It's like, that's a well-established joke in the United States for hundreds of years. Like there was propaganda made by leftists back 100 years ago about the Ku Klux Klan, and underneath was their cop uniform. So it's like a little running joke we have in this country. But regardless, the chief, let's just be frank. I mean, as an administrator of a giant organization, the LAPD, it's huge. He did the right thing as CEO. This is a fucking distraction. This isn't worth me dealing with people complaining. This isn't part of official uniform. You can't fucking display it when you're on duty.
And it could, and because it could, like you're saying, it could affect the bottom line if enough people are upset about it. And I just want to add, Blue Life.
Like he doesn't even have to have like a good ideological stance and agree with that it represents Nazi.
No, it's not about that. It's about the money that the constituents would take.
I just don't have time for this shit. Mm-hmm. That's basically what he's saying. I don't want to deal with this. But of course, rank and file officers are very upset, and so is Fox News.
LOL. Hard LOL.
They're saying that like they're being vilified, and like it's taking away one of their recruitment tools is like one of the kind of implications. I'm paraphrasing, but like they to me the blue line is basically a swastika.
To me, it's embarrassing for the whole entire group of people that say Blue Lives Matter. Like, are you Smurfs? What the fuck are you talking about? Like, you are going to work every day like me and getting a paycheck. I don't have a flag that says IRB analyst lives matter. That's right. Insanity. You do not need that for your job. It's really.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's just very offensive that it's like in response as well to Black people trying to claim some like voice in society. Like it's basically clearly a response to Black Lives Matter, and it's a super racist one.
It's a well-documented direct response to Black Lives Matter. And weirdly, it's a dog whistle for White Lives Matter, which is also a direct response. Weirdly, White Lives Matter kind of holds a little more water as the construct of white skin exists, whereas like
at least that's like humanity.
You're born that way. So like I'm not ever going to advocate for White Lives Matter sloganing, because Black Lives Matter means like all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. So
exactly.
We need them to matter before all lives can matter. So Black lives need to matter first, because the white lives have been mattering. They're still included in the Black Lives Matter, and they just also matter. Calm down. But like a Blue Life Matter makes no sense, because like, what do you mean? You're going to work. Mama didn't pop you out with
as a cop.
Yeah, and
you came out with a handgun and a badge, is what you're saying.
Become an environmental cop, and they're green, so you got that going for you.
EPO.
So, like, if you want to be an environmental cop, well, actually, I heard environmental. I have a friend that used to be married to an environmental cop, and it sounds very the culture is just as corrupt as that's the police culture. I'm not sure how it's corrupted, but it just sounds like it's pretty toxic male frat bro culture. It sounds just as fucking broken.
Absolutely. They're like riding around. Small story. They're riding around in Western Mass on ATVs sometimes. And there are people I know 20 years ago who would just outrun the EPO on ATVs. And it's like, they're high speed chasing you through the forest, sometimes for stupid ass shit. Like that's another arm of the police that it's just like, I do think the environment's important, but I've called them on occasions when something like actually has happened to the environment, not due to a person, just like they're sometimes the first point of contact to like check on something besides the health department. And again, they're just like you said, like it's not really, they're not here to do.
You're here to hand out fines. That's
what and like try to capture you and then give you off to the other police in some way.
Right. But anyways, sorry to go on a rant about this, but the LAPD is really big mad. And, it's funny because like LAPD is so fucked up. Like it's so bad. They're where Copaganda actually originated. I think, was it John Oliver did a segment on Copaganda, and I recommend anybody that wants a little softer, goofier take on Copaganda or take on anything. John Oliver is a good good show to watch, because he's got a lightness to him, even when he's talking about heavy topics, whereas I think I'm a little heavy handed, so maybe I'm not always the best guy to deliver this news. But um part of me is I believe in matching energies personally, and sometimes you got to put that energy out in the world to like match the energy that is coming out. So Copaganda is really violent and gross. And they, Joanna and I's journey started over Copaganda, actually. So like this goes back to um when we first started working together on activist work. Holyoke PD used an image of a child in crisis in an Instagram post, and like clearly couldn't have consented to it. Like its parents were in the hospital because they were overdosing on something, and basically they wanted to be like, look, we saved this kid and we're waiting for DCF to come. It's like, why did you this just happened like an hour ago, why are you posting about this? Why is this kid who can't consent in the photo? Why is this kid's story out there? Like, who is this helping? And the parents can't even consent to it, and like this is like the beginning of a really shitty fucking downward spiral for this kid. Like this DCF's not a great system to fall into, especially when your parents are fucked up, and it sucks, and it's not centered on the victim. And you guys just want to like show that you're human. This is how you do it. You do it by taking advantage of somebody's crisis. So even when the cops look like they're doing the right thing, they're doing something really inhumane by um you know taking advantage. I mean, what was that? There was something a little while ago, like some immigrant the subway shooter in New York City. Do you remember that?
I don't. You'll have to fill me in. You know me with the information plunging.
And this is like beginning of Eric Adams' tenure, and this is when he ramped up the subway.
Oh, I do remember him ramping up the cop presence on the
There was a
subway.
guy who like did a mass shooting in a train car in Brooklyn, and they couldn't find him. NYPD couldn't find him, and some like random like bodega worker visa
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was awesome. Actually, that worker was like helpful for the community.
like did the cops used him for like, oh, thanks for being a good New Yorker, and then they basically like, we found the guy, and it was like this one guy found him, and then they allowed him to get deported.
Yeah, I mean that's the
They
thing. They're not.
reported him for being fucking undocumented. It's like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, they
It's
used it
just
for propaganda, then he could. It's like, you
the
gotta be fucking kidding me. It's so like, it's so vile the shit they do to people, and they think, and this is the thing, I genuinely think most of these people that work in this institution do think they're doing the right thing.
I was gonna say that. Like, I hope that people realize, like,
They've been awash in the propaganda.
yeah, like I don't even think that potentially the whole because the whole that story you brought up, you really that day were very upset, justifiably so. Once you showed me, I was very upset, and you did let a number of people know, and apparently others in the community were upset as well. So based on all of our feedback, they took it down. I do want to say, like, I don't even know if the people doing it at this point know what they're doing is wrong, because, like you said, it's programmed, it's just so normalized that I think they're just like doing their job, and like it took people, I mean, so that's why I think we all just need to self-reflect on things, and I know that that's probably not something the police are going to do, so potentially all of us can think about that, and like, do we want the police using social media even at all? Like, why is that part of their job?
They
And that's
should
some.
not. Listen, we need journalism to dig in, ask questions, do records requests. They need, just like I was saying earlier with Merrick Garland being the attorney general, doing not doing press conferences and doing a bully pulpit. When you're doing law enforcement, your work has to show your work through the proper channels, go through the court system, do your work, do your diligent work, prove that this violent, awful crime happened, if that's the case, or if it's a conspiracy for wage theft.
And
Show
I
your
get.
work, show your work there. Do it through the process. Don't use the media. Let the media do what the media is going to do by doing records requests and getting interviews and asking what the fuck's going on. We shouldn't be spending money on you guys trying to spin yourselves to look good to justify your budget requests.
Well, and I know some community members, especially in Holyoke, will say like, "But we want all the information. We want to know right away." Yada yada yada. To you, I say, get a police scanner. When I was a young person, my grandfather and his friends all had police scanners so they could hear what was going on all day. I'm sorry, like you shouldn't want the media pumping it through. I personally feel triggered by the fact that the police are pumping that through. So, like, if you really need to hear everything going on with the police department in your town, police scanners are still a thing.
Invest
Feel
in
free.
journalism. Hey, call to action. Invest in journalism. Give money
Yeah,
to journalists to sit
that
and
too.
fucking police scanners so they go ask the police what the fuck is going on.
That too.
All
Like,
this action here. What are you guys up to? And how are you spending our money on this?
but like the police giving you the spoon feeding you the information is not the only way to
No,
get the
it's
information.
actually quite fascist, and I like we had that conversation with a community member, or Joanna. I don't know if you remember this, but I feel comfortable saying it. Basically, like I want to know, and I'm like, getting it directly from the horse's mouth isn't always the good thing.
Well, and
Unfortunately,
I feel unsafe when they're just constantly berating me with like
that too.
that. So it's like I know every community member has a different reaction, but if you really want that information, like police scanners are a thing. Like,
In the balance of government thing, if you're the rest of the government, right? And I'm not saying the government should want to cover things up. Like we should want truth and reconciliation, right? But like, wouldn't it upset you if you're trying to make Holyoke a safer place and more welcoming place? Why would you want to advertise how like violent
yeah, all the violent crime, every
over,
crime that every single one that happens. Like I want that posted up on the like freaking board. And why?
even though violent things have happened here, it's not a like overall, it's still majority good people.
Yeah, and a lot of the violent crimes that occur like are
About
issues, but they're often people that know each other. That's most violent crimes, everyone. Like most things are not random.
police shouldn't be deciding what's important to share.
No.
The community needs to do that, and the community can do that by investing in local journalists, investing in young people or anybody that wants to sit in city council meetings and write blurbs and publish it. Who want to scan the police scanner? Who want to find out what restaurants are really struggling with workers' rights. Um, or not restaurants specifically, but businesses, finding how this community ticks. Invest in journalism. That's
Absolutely.
the answer, because asking the government to tell us the truth all the time, that's just naive, and people want to protect their jobs because profit motive, because right now our system is profit based down to the individual worker, because your hours have value and you need to get your value back, and you don't want to ever compromise that, because like we were saying earlier in the episode, you're closer to being homeless than to being a billionaire. All of us, anybody listening to this podcast, you're all one bad step away from being homeless. It's
It
not
sucks. It's real though. It's actual. It's like that could happen.
just the actual like amount of things you need to have happen to become a billionaire from not already coming from extreme wealth. Yeah, and it's a lot easier to fall down than to climb up.
That's true too, honestly. Oh my gosh, at like a physical level, Spence. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so imagine already being on the bottom and keep falling because the weight of the world keeps pushing you back down, and
No, totally.
that's why we have to understand intersectionality. It's not simple. Like there's different shades of how people are in their position in the society.
And completely. And my brothers and sisters not in Christ because I'm not a religious person anymore. Like, please think about the cruelty and like reflect on things. Budget season's coming. It's spring. So Spence and I can gear up now for some of our favorite local times, which is budget season, which will start for some places like April through June. But like they're planning now, elections will happen. And now is a good time to familiarize yourself with stuff because it's just important. It's your town, it's your money. And I think it's your safety in actuality. Public safety doesn't mean police. It means our dollars going to things that matter, that uplift our communities and that keep us safe. And I think for me, that's why I want people to understand how dangerous the police narrative can be.
Yeah. So Copaganda kills. I mean, it does, it does, it does. I just want to, before we close out the episode, I want to thank everybody, remind everybody to check out our social media, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. Follow us there, subscribe, like, leave a review if you have time. That helps. It's great. Check out our Patreon. And we always post the links on our website. I want to give a shout out to, since we talked a lot about Copaganda today, to a creator on TikTok, Twitter, rather. I keep switching those two up. Sorry about that. He's on Twitter. His name's Equality Alec on Twitter. Alec with the C. He's a civil rights lawyer that spends a lot of time breaking down propaganda. He has a newsletter. He sends out every week.
I subscribe. I would urge everyone to.
And it's dense stuff, but he's a contemporary example of like a thought leader on propaganda and abolition, and he's extremely well sourced and knowledgeable in the system and how the criminal justice system works and how the media landscape works, and he ties it together quite nicely. So Joanna and I, a lot of these thoughts, remember, like, we didn't like wake up and we're not, this is a community effort. Everybody brings their own thing to the table. I try to bring my, pick things up, put things down mentality, because some people hear that better. Joanna brings her style. I'll leave her to describe her style.
I'm just really into like the numbers, the research. I know that like it does align with big data and that's what they're doing to us. So I like to be able to see the numbers and not turn it around on them, but really just like understand them at a base level. And I think awareness is huge. As someone I've talked about it in my past who grew up, I'm an ex-evangelical now. Um, truth is important to me. A lot of my childhood was filled with fantasies and lies. I don't blame anyone for that. It's not part of my life now, but I will not let the police create that narrative for me in any way, shape, or form. So I hope I'm awareness building for everyone. I hope that I'm able to provide resources. And sometimes I hope that we're able to break down really dense things, research and numbers in a way that make you feel, I hope in some ways radicalized to care more or care at all if you don't, because I know so many of you do, about your local budgets, about where things are going. And I hope you feel empowered, um, that you can do it. It's not just Spencer or me or anyone, not even Alec or any of the other amazing people out there fighting daily, whose names I'm not going to name now, but I think you alone getting out there, working with anyone in your community, or just being aware of things is really helpful. And that is why I do this.
I even think just sharing resources, like, say, you're like, hey, tell people about the weed out. That's great. That's us being selfish plug. Please share our podcast. It's how we grow. Please, please, please share. But or we just referenced Equality Alec on Twitter. Which, if you go there, then you'll see a bunch of other people he refers to. There's a giant ecosystem. We all bring our own um perspective on things, and you can even do simple things. Like, I brought this up in a previous episode, and I'll bring it up again because I think it's a great tactic. When you're watching football with your buddies or whatever, and the fucking bumper advertiser comes on, right? And the announcers are like, and this week on Crime and Solving, or whatever the fuck, Blue Crime, whatever the fuck the name of the TV shows are on these network shows are. And you're like, oh, man, really scraping the bottom of the propaganda ideas, huh? And somebody might look at you and be like, we'll talk about it some other time. Just kind of like, just leave the seed. I don't know. Like, you don't have to make a big deal about it. It doesn't have to be your like thesis statement like it is for me. But propaganda kills, and let's just stop. We don't have to we can stop listening to them, and we can take that tool away from them if we just stop listening to them.
Propaganda.
Yeah, that's us. We're stopaganda. So again, thank you for listening to the Weed Out as always. Please always feel free to share us with your friends and family. Follow us on all the social medias. Visit our website for any links that we reference in the next episode, theweedout.com. And I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, thanking you as always. And I'll let Joanna say goodbye for herself, but I appreciate everybody tuning in, and we have some cool stuff coming down the line. So looking forward to it.
I appreciate everyone too, and thank you for listening and following along with us, and take care.